Hi all, welcome back to another episode of Taste of Tastemaker. So excited to have you all here today. We're gonna go ahead and wait for our guests to join us today. We're gonna be joined by our friend LaKita Anderson. When she goes ahead and request, we'll go ahead and get her in here. Oh, I think that's her. Let's see. Just invited her in, so let's give it a second to have her join us. Hi to everyone joining. Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, you're looking cute today.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm
Yes, we
so
do.
excited you're here for our tastemakers who came to our virtual conference in the fall. They've already met you, so that's
Yes.
wonderful. So I'll go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about Taste of Tastemaker, and then we'll have you do your introduction, and then we'll get into all of these great questions we've been sent.
Okay.
So my name is Amanda. I'm the digital marketing and social media manager for Tastemaker Conference. And I host these once a month to bring in experts to kind of fill in the gaps between our conferences. We have so much great information at our conferences, but we've only had the virtual conferences, and then we'll have our in-person again in March. But there's so much time in between. So we wanted to be able to bring the experts to the people. Um, we record these as well, so they go up on our Instagram, and then we also share them on our YouTube so that kind of everybody can get a taste of Tastemaker Conference. So yeah, we just host these. They're usually about 15 to 30 minutes long, so people, you can come and go as you please, ask questions. We'll get to those at the end. And today I just wanted to introduce LaKita and let you tell a little bit about yourself. Today our topic is landing your dream partner in 2022. So basically, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of tell everybody your connection with Tastemaker Conference?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is LaKita Anderson, and I blog at simplylakita.com. I started blogging in 2013 just for fun as a hobby blogger. I was working in corporate America, and it was just something about coming home after a stressful day at work and making cookies that like took me back to being a kid and in the kitchen with my mom and my aunts and everybody that just felt so familiar and good. And my cousin was the one that said, you should start a blog to share your recipes. I had no idea what a blog was. So I had to do my research. I'm a researcher by nature. So I went and did my research and I started a blog. And after doing that, I was hooked. I was excited. I was able to grow my audience. 3 years later, brands started reaching out to me, wanting to partner and offer me money. And I was like, what do you mean? I can get paid to do this? Like, this is really a thing. I'm in. So that's all it took for me to go like full out and become
Love it.
more serious. And I was able to grow my audience. And literally a year later after that, I had made enough money in brand partnerships to like surpass my corporate income that I was making. So I worked for a few more years and then I decided, you know what, I'm just going to be my own boss and do this full time. And as Amanda said, I was able to speak at the Tastemaker conference this fall, the virtual conference. And I just love the way that Tastemaker is like available to bloggers to help us learn. Because when I got started, it was like an island. I had nobody to help me. I didn't know what I was doing. I had to just figure it out on my own. And I made a lot of mistakes that I had to go back and repair and get
Yes.
help for. And I love that this platform actually gives people a head start and a leg up, and you're not an island unto yourself because blogging is very lonely. So I love that Tastemaker is available. I wish we had these back like in 2013 when I got
Right?
started.
We definitely hear that a lot. And I think, like you're saying, like it's resources, yeah, but it's also
Mhm.
community because
Yes.
it is so lonely. I know a lot of people have this now, this work experience or work from home experience that maybe they wouldn't get. But as food bloggers, once you go full time with that, there's no one around. It's just you.
Mm-mm.
And some of your blogger besties might live in another part of the
Yeah.
country. Like I'm in California and you're in Florida. And so it's like
Hmm.
we are very far apart.
Yes.
And so to me, it's like, that's very far. So
Hmm.
it is very interesting to see who your quote unquote coworkers are and how far
Yes.
away they live. So it is nice to kind of have this as an ability to
Hmm.
grow that community and meet new people. So
Yes,
we love
definitely.
having you, and we loved having you in the fall, and
Yes.
everybody loved your session. And we had so many questions that we weren't even able to
Aw.
get to. So I'm excited today that we'll be able to get into that.
Yes.
You kind of shared a little bit about your journey with us and kind of what that's looked like for you. Um, is there anyone, I guess, that if people are looking for their brand partner, dream client, what should they be looking for? Um, what is kind of something that they should be looking at? Should it just be like, oh, this is a huge client and I
Mm.
want them because they're big? Or
Hmm.
should they be looking at something else as far as like, oh, will they actually be able to pay me? Or are they
Mm.
local? Do they fit
Yeah.
my values? Like what do you think like new to people who are new to this should be
Mhm.
looking for?
I think if you're brand new to working with brand partnerships and that's something that you want to do, I think when it comes to, defining your dream brand, like that is something that's very specific to you. It's very personal and it's not going to look like everyone else's dream brand. Like all of our dream brands are going to be different and that's how it's supposed to be. So I think it's about, you kind of soul searching and just figuring out like what your brand, your dream brand looks like. How does it align with your values? How does it fit into your everyday life? Like, why do you love this? Going through those motions, making sure that, your values, they have the same values and that you're not, selling yourself um, to a brand that you like don't feel icky about.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really, really it. You just have to define your dream brand for yourself, and it looks different for everybody.
So agree. A lot of bloggers will post something like, "Oh, I'm so excited! I'm working with a dream brand," and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like the word should be my dream brand.
Yes.
As somebody who like doesn't eat red meat, they're like,
Yes.
"It's a steak company," and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"That's not my dream brand.
Right.
I can't
Right.
work with them. Like, I
Right.
couldn't even taste their products."
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that it definitely comes down to that. And yeah, your values.
Yeah.
Like, is this someone who you actually, if you don't shop in their store
Yes.
regularly or you don't shop their products, like, don't be
Yes.
looking at them just because they're a big name
Mm-hmm.
doesn't necessarily. Or the
Yeah.
other one, which I think is really hard for people, just because they're willing to pay you
Yes.
doesn't mean you should partner with them.
Right, right, right. It definitely should be. It's a very personal decision. I mean, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be. And I think you just have to really decide like why. I think your dream brand ultimately should be the brand that, you know what, I would use and love this product even if they didn't pay me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just how much I love it.
Yeah. And I think too, right? Like there's this difference between like a partnership
Hmm.
and a client. So like if
Yes.
you wanted the money because they need photos and you need the
Hmm.
money, take them on as a client and do
Yes.
photography work for them. Don't
Yes.
put them on your blog, don't whatever. I think that's a
Hmm.
little bit different if not that you don't you should
Hmm.
maybe like them, but like for me, like I'm not going to eat steak.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if they paid me to take pictures of it, like
Yeah.
I might take pictures of it, share with the
Hmm.
neighbors, whatever.
Yep. And that's where I think you have to look at the different ways that you can partner with a brand
Yeah.
because you could partner as an influencer and you would be introducing your audience to that product, but you could also just work with the brand and, like you said, provide photos, provide blog posts for their sites, different things like that. So there's just different ways that you can actually partner with a brand to get paid.
I love that. Okay, we have a lot of questions, so
Okay.
we might not get to all of them. And if people have them, there is a little question box down on the bottom
Yes.
of the screen. So feel free to send those in too. We always get interesting ones there. Okay, we'll get started with the ones that we were sent.
Okay.
So the most basic of all the questions, how should bloggers and content creators look for brands to work with?
I think the easiest way to look for brands to work with is just like think about your own life and your own daily life and the products and things that you already use. So you can look around your house literally and pick out, okay, I use that every day. I use that. I use that. And just think about how you could, integrate, those brands into like a partnership. I think that's just really the main thing that you would seek out. And then once you've decided on the brands that you want to partner with, like I think the first thing is we're going into 2022. So I'm a list person by nature. So I think the first thing you should do is just list out your dream brands. So we're going into 2022, list out 12, one for each month that you want to work with. And then once you've got that list nailed down, this is my dream list, then you can start pursuing those brands and reaching out and pitching to them.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that totally makes sense. Instead of just like looking for people, I hear a lot of advice that's like, look for people who are already doing brand partnerships. Look for this. And it's like, well, what if they're already booked because they
Yeah.
do so many? So, yeah, maybe look around, see what you already use, and use that as a part of your pitch. Like, I've been using this pasta
Yeah.
sauce for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already
And I
a big
think you
fan.
lose some of the organic, partnering with the brand when you go seeking out, okay, let me add them to the list because they work with this influencer. Let me add them because they work with that one. It's like you lose your audience because your audience can kind of smell a mile away if they're being sold something that you're not like true to. And so
Right.
you would never want to, do that.
Yeah.
Your audience, they trust you. They know they trust you. And you definitely don't want to break that trust.
True, true, true. That's why they're here.
Yes.
That's why they're on your page.
Yes.
So once you've kind of determined that list and you start doing your research on that brand, what's something in particular that you think people should always look for when they're researching a brand?
When you're researching a brand that you want to partner with, I always say use the tools that you have available. So you think about a brand, they have social media, they have a website, and they're usually, their employees are on LinkedIn. So use the tools that you're given. Like you can go when it comes to social media, follow them, start engaging with their content, try to get on their radar, try to, see if they'll start following you and try to make that connection with the social media person. Or just go to their website and just research what products do they have coming out? What partnerships are they doing? What's going on with them in the upcoming year? And then, of course, with LinkedIn, once you've decided, okay, this is my dream brand, this is who I want to work with, then the best place to find those email addresses and those people to reach out to is always doing your research on like LinkedIn.
I love that. Yeah, I don't think enough people use it because I think we tend to think of LinkedIn as like corporate
Mm-hmm.
America and we kind of see it as that. But almost everyone, I mean, at least for me, like when I graduated college, it was like, get on LinkedIn or you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to get a job. And so,
Yeah.
like, everyone has to be on there. Every corporate job I did have
Mm-hmm.
required that
Yeah.
we had one because I was in development. So it was like, if you're
Mm.
going to go out there and ask a donor for money, they need to be able
Mm-hmm.
to find you on LinkedIn. And it was like,
Yes.
okay. So I
Yes.
feel like everyone who is in
Mm-hmm.
marketing, because that's usually who you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
most likely is going to be on LinkedIn
Yes.
versus like trying to find them on Instagram and stuff. I feel like those are
Yes.
usually personal accounts, and I would actually like recommend not
Yes.
finding them
Yes.
on there because it's not as
Yes.
professional.
And LinkedIn
Um,
is more so it's like more corporate. So usually,
yeah,
they you can follow the brand on
yeah,
LinkedIn and usually they'll post on their page of things that are going on within like on the corporate level. And
yeah.
you can maybe try to figure out like how could I partner with them on this?
Yeah, because they make those big announcements. So they might be announcing
Mhm.
new products, they might be
Mhm.
announcing a rebrand, they
Mhm.
might be announcing any of these things that you could be like, oh, they're doing a rebrand. If they're
Mhm.
rebranding all their products, they
Yes.
might need new photos for their
Yes.
website, or they might need this, this, and this. So I think that's a
Yes.
great way.
And the
Honestly,
good
I think
thing
it's super underlooked. I
Yes.
think that
And
that's
the
a
good thing
huge
is a
thing.
lot of times whenever they make those announcements, it's usually attached to a press release.
Yeah,
And usually those things are like gold for contact. If you
yeah,
scroll all the way to the bottom,
yep.
it usually has a media person, a marketing person, and it usually
Hmm.
has like their phone number and their email address. And
Yeah,
that's like the perfect way for you to just, make an introduction to the brand and let them know who you
yeah.
are.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that that's just completely underlooked. So,
Hmm.
nugget of gold, everyone,
Yes.
for
The
today.
press releases.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that you like to keep a list of the people who you want to reach out to. Do you have advice or what you like to do for how you like to track who you've contacted, how many times? Do you use like a spreadsheet? What do you make sure you track?
I actually do use a spreadsheet. It's just like an Excel, like a Google, sheet type of document. And once I do my list, so it's 2022, we're going to list out our 12 brands that we want to work with. That's our dream list. And then what I would do is I would start researching on their social media, their website, and their LinkedIn. Once I have the contact information, then I would send them my pitch email. And it's not going to be a lot, just more so an introduction to get on their radar and let them know that, hey, I'm here. I want to work with you. I have a couple ideas. Let's connect. And if I don't hear anything after I send the initial email, if I don't hear anything, then I'll usually reach back out to them a week later. And then if I don't hear anything, I might reach out to them 30 days later. And I'll just notate this on my Google spreadsheet. And it's really up to you how bad you want to partner with the brand. After the first month, I usually put them on like 6 months and then a year follow up. And if it's crickets, I don't get a response from it, then I might go back to LinkedIn. I might go back to doing my research and try to
Right.
find like another contact person. And usually if I made contact with them and they say, well, now's not a good time, we're not really doing partnerships right now, I will ask them, is it okay if I reach out to you within 6 months from now? Is it okay if I circle back with you next quarter? I will ask them. And most of the time they'll say, sure, go ahead and send me something. Or they'll say, I'm not the best person, send it to this person. So,
Right. No, that totally makes sense. And I think it is smart to come up with what works for you, like you said.
yes.
Because I think once again, a lot of people have this advice of like, you have to do it this many times. You have to do it 4 days, then six
Mm-hmm.
days, then 2 days. There's a math to the science behind it. And it's like, some people just
Yeah.
don't open their emails. Some people,
Yeah.
there isn't a science. Sometimes
Yeah.
just like, oh, this person was busy on Tuesday because
Yeah.
something happened in the factory and they had to do this, this,
Mm-hmm.
and this. So you got to
And I
follow up
find
and
it's easier just to ask them. If
yeah,
once they contact you, just ask them, hey, is it better if I reach out to you next quarter, fourth quarter, six
yeah.
months, a year from now? And usually they know what's going on internally and they'll just tell you, yeah, just, circle back with us in 6 months.
Yeah. And I think, even reaching out to people, I want to say I was reaching out to people in maybe June or July,
Mm-hmm.
asking them about Q4, and some
Yeah.
of them were already full.
Yeah.
And
You
they were
kind of,
like, we're already
yeah.
full,
Yeah.
contact us. Don't contact us again until January to
Mm-hmm.
start working in January. While other
Yes.
brands were like, okay, reach out to us in October to start
Yes.
talking about January. Like everyone has their own
Mm-hmm.
timeline and they'll tell you what that is.
Yes.
Um, if they get back in contact. And sometimes you just won't hear back from people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It's
that's
just,
okay
yeah.
too. And it happens. And I do
Yeah.
hear a lot like it's a numbers game. And I
Mm-hmm.
do believe that a little bit, but I also believe there's a lot of like more research that can be done sometimes because a lot
Yes.
of people just send emails to like
Mm-hmm.
info@worldmarket.com or whatever. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not who's
Yeah,
going to get
yeah.
you the
That's
right
why I was like, if it's
information.
cricket, sometimes you might have to go back
Yeah,
and you might have to just kind of see if you can find another contact. That's
right.
why I think a good goal to have is to have a list of 12 and
Yeah,
then one for each month. And then you're not like sweating that one so hard because you're
right.
like, okay, I'll circle back to them next month and I'll just move on to the next one on my list. And it's not so
Yeah.
much pressure to work with that one.
Yeah. And I think too, like if you're honing in on 12, like you
Mm-hmm.
can really make sure that like they
Mm-hmm.
align with you. Like I know for myself, like I'm into entertainment recipes. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at a brand, I should be specifically looking at a brand that would make sense. Like make sure that it's within what you do and
Yes.
you'll have more success in that way.
Yes.
Um, People come to me, especially during the holidays, I get bombarded with like entertainment
Mm-hmm.
charcuterie boards and whatever. And
Yes.
I'm like, I know this is my thing. I really do love them.
Mm-hmm.
But like all of a sudden it's like, oh, we didn't get enough of these things done. Can
Mm-hmm.
you take
Yep.
1,200 photos of this? And I'm like, oh God. So it's
Yes.
like, know your brand and know
Yes.
what fits within your brand. Because if you're just
Mm-hmm.
doing the numbers game, it actually might just be worse for you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the person you do hear from could be the brand that you were like, "Oh," like
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really want to work with
Mm-hmm.
them.
And be open too. Be open because like I redo my so what I'm telling you about the 12 brands, I do that every year and usually I end up marking off most of those brands. And sometimes it doesn't come from the place I thought it was going to come from. Sometimes it may come from a different brand, a totally different brand that has decided that they just want to
Yeah.
partner with them. And sometimes it may come from a PR company, or it may come from like an influencer, type uh, blogger type, what is it? Like Clever and all of those
Oh,
different
yeah, yeah, yeah. The
platforms.
influencer
It,
platforms.
yes, it might come from there. So
Yeah.
don't, be more open that it may not come
Yes.
from where you want to come from.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you may be like, okay, I want to work with, this partner. I want to work with this particular brand X. And it's like, you may not get to work with brand X, but you may get to work with the grocery store and they may be okay with you
Yes.
implementing that brand. So just be open, to the process.
Yeah, and I think that's true too, is like a lot of times, especially people, I think a lot of people tend to think that those platforms are only for beginners, but I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are on those platforms
Mm-hmm.
because of certain brands. So, like,
Yes.
I've worked with a brand who in the last 2 years moved to an
Mm-hmm.
influencer platform.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have to do all of my partnerships with them through there. And sometimes, like you said, like they'll partner with a grocery store, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now I'm promoting a grocery store and this brand, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll shop sometimes at that grocery store. It's not like I hate that grocery store,
Yeah.
but it's like, oh, okay, like now I'll
Yes.
have these two linked together. So it is opening
Mm-hmm.
up to, the idea of not just working one
Mm-hmm.
on one directly with that brand. I think that's really
Yes.
smart, and it is something to think about because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot of times people are like, I'm gonna work with this brand, it's gonna be me and
Mm-hmm.
this brand, and we're gonna be whatever. And it's like, oh, there could be like 25
Yeah.
people on that campaign
Yeah,
and you're all
because I
working
think
through
I think a
somebody else.
couple years I think a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I wanted to like a turkey brand was on my list like every year for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. And, and I would pitch and pitch and pitch and I could never get with a turkey brand. And then it just so happened that like a poultry scissor company was like,
Oh my gosh.
we want you to demonstrate our shears with a turkey for
That's
Thanksgiving.
so
And I
good.
was like, look
Okay,
at there. It did not come
I'll do
how
it.
I thought it was going to come, but I was still able to mark it off my list. Like, hey, I still
Yeah.
work with that
No, that
company.
totally works. That's so funny. Yeah, that's definitely like one of those ways it turns it around. But
Mm-hmm.
also, too, like you work with one of those companies, like you said, and then all of a sudden it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, this could open up more opportunities for
Yes.
you too, and to continue those. Okay, what is one of your biggest challenges with client partnership work? Does it usually happen like in the getting of the partnerships, in the process?
Usually the biggest challenge for me is, and I think that you just want to make sure that you're protected like legally. So you want to make sure that because these brands have, they have whole legal teams that are looking out for their best interests. And a lot of times with us, it's just us. Like we don't have a legal team. So I always say if there's something in the contract that you don't understand, don't be afraid to reach out to, a legal person, a lawyer, and have them to look over it and explain things to you that you don't understand. Sometimes lawyers will just charge for that document review,
Right,
and I'll usually print my contract off. I'll go through it. I'll read it. I'll highlight what I don't understand. I'll ask the brand. So always be looking at your best interest because sometimes they'll slip things in there on you that you didn't agree in the verbal conversation or the email dialogue. So definitely that's always the challenge, the legal, because we're the creatives. So we're always
right,
the talent. We want to, I just want to get behind the camera and cook great food, but it's
right.
looking at that, so the challenge is always protecting yourself and always making sure that you're clear with the brand on your voice and who you are. I think the biggest challenges I run into with brands are when they haven't done their research on me and they're expecting something totally different than who I am. And then we run into that part where it's like, that's just not me. And I just don't feel comfortable doing that. So, but on the legal aspect, don't be afraid to put a clause in to say, hey, if this doesn't work, I can cut out as well. So,
Yeah.
always be looking out for your best interest because the brand is certainly going to look out for theirs.
Right. And I think that's important. I save every version now of the
Mm-hmm.
contract that they send because I get so nervous that something will have
Mm-hmm.
changed. So I try to just compare them, even just in like length sometimes. And you'll find
Yes.
like, ooh, that one looks a little longer. Oh,
Yeah.
they added a sentence in there.
Yes.
So even if you're not reading word for word, kind of scanning them next to each
Mm-hmm.
other and going, why did this page end here
Yeah.
when it ended here before? And
Mm-hmm.
just kind of thinking, okay, what got added? And I
Yes.
tend to send my contract, and if they say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you have to
Yeah.
only have one, I say,
Yeah.
okay, then add all of my
Add this.
gobbledygook
We need an
to
addendum.
yours.
Yes.
Yeah, like I need to make sure that
Yes.
you're saying that it's okay if this, and this happens. And like you
Yeah.
said, a lot of times brands want to send like a creative brief after the
Mm-hmm.
contract, and it's like, no,
Mm-mm.
I'm not
Nope.
going to agree to do something that you might come back and change, not just, what we kind of talked about, but like the
Mm-hmm.
complete aesthetic and or what I'm
Yeah.
using. Or I've had people come back and say they want me to use stuff that I'm literally allergic to. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
how am I
Yeah.
supposed to have that in my house? Like
Yeah.
what's happening? So I do feel
Yes.
like, yeah, you have to look out for yourself because once again, you are this team of one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
even if you have, I know a lot of people are like, well, I do have a little bit of a team. Some people,
Mm-hmm.
have a virtual assistant or whatever. Those people
Right.
aren't looking out for you the same way.
Mm-mm.
Those are huge companies for the most
Yes.
part. And even sometimes when they're smaller companies,
Mm-hmm.
those smaller companies are like a sister branch of
Mm-hmm.
some bigger company. And it's like, well, yeah, but they still have hundreds of employees and
Yeah.
you're one person. And if you
Yes.
don't look out, they could have licensed away all of your
Yes.
photos and
And
your
that's what you
recipe.
really
And
want to pay attention to is usage, licensing, and exclusivity. You
yes,
always, always, always want to pay attention to what's going on with that. And if it says perpetuity, like forever, ever, ever,
run.
ever, ever, definitely, if you don't do anything else, just mark that out and say,
Yes.
no, ma'am, because I
Yeah,
don't even know where I'm going to be 10 years from now, or if I even want that
right.
content out there.
Right. Yeah, it could be, I think it could be either way, right? Like you could
Mm-hmm.
end up being the next like, you know, Ida Garden and
Right.
and you just sold away something. Or
Mm-hmm.
you could end up being like, oh, I turned vegan and I
Yes.
don't want my name associated with that turkey company anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
you
don't
never know
ever do
what's going to
that.
happen.
Don't I always say give them a year. Like
Yeah.
they can use it for a year. And if they want it for longer than that, then we have to come back to the negotiation table and we have to discuss you using it for another year.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
That makes sense. And I think too, a lot of times, like I didn't think about this before until someone mentioned it to me, was like, how long does it have to be on your website? And
Yeah.
that exclusivity there, like you were
Yeah.
saying, like maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 3 weeks, whatever it
Yeah.
is, so you can't post a brand that's like too similar. But then
Mm-hmm.
also, like, does it have to stay on your blog as
Yeah.
sponsored by
Forever.
whatever
Yeah.
forever?
Yeah.
Because like there are some recipes where all of a sudden I look back on it and I've
Mm-hmm.
started making it differently myself,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I don't make it this way anymore. I want to edit it,
Yeah.
but I gave this person a year, so I need to keep it as it
You keep
is
it that. Yeah.
until that year hits, and then I can switch things up.
Yeah. So definitely pay attention to those three things. If you don't take anything else from this conversation,
Yes.
watch out for your exclusivity, your usage, and your licensing.
Yes, completely agree. And I think that took me a lot of this took me a very long time
Yeah.
because I wasn't doing this, but like that really for me took me a long time to get there and to
Yeah.
get a real contract that I had put
Mm-hmm.
in place. And it's like
Yes.
20 something pages long. But I
Yes.
was
Yeah.
like,
You
it's
have to
okay. And
protect
then I'll have
yourself.
brands send me like a 2-page doc and I'm like, sorry, that's
Yes.
not gonna work.
Yes. Always protect yourself because the brand is certainly protecting their best interest.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so that is our biggest challenge. Oh, how do you in particular, like, what is your biggest piece of advice that you could give somebody like when you landed a dream client? Like, what was like this one special thing maybe you did that was maybe different than random advice you hear out there?
When I landed my dream client, I don't know. Because I always have a list, so I always have more than one dream client.
Right, yeah,
And then like I have my big whales out there
right.
that I've pitched and pitched, and they're just like, mm-mm. So I think that there's never really any special thing that I do, because even though they're your dream client, you just treat them just like any other client. Like my rates are my rates. I'm going to give you the same thing. I'm going to get clear on the ask. I'm going to get clear on the deliverables. I'm going to make sure that we're on the same page and that I'm protected legally. And I may love your brand, but I'm never going to overlook those things because it would be irresponsible for me as a business owner. So just always like I said, it always goes back to protecting yourself no matter who you're working with. Yeah, I'm excited and I love you, but and don't be afraid to stick to your rates. Like you can be my dream brand and I can love you and I can use you every single day of my life, but my rates are my rates. So you're not going to send me, ice cream and cookies as payment because unfortunately my mortgage
No.
doesn't accept that.
Nope.
So you can,
So
but I
true.
always say, you can send them to me as a consumer. You can send me those free products because I'm a consumer and I do
Sure.
buy things for my household. That's great. But if you want to work with me, I am a business and I'm going to need
Right.
to be compensated properly.
Right. And you and I
So,
have talked about this before, separately, but like
mhm,
if they come back and say, well, this is my price, I only
mhm,
have this much budget, can you do all of that for
mhm,
this? It's okay to come back and say no, but I
mhm.
can do less work for you,
Yes,
less deliverables, if that's what you're comfortable with. Like if you're
yes,
charging, $2,000 for this partnership and they come back and say we have $700 and you're like,
mhm,
okay, great, I'll post a photo in
yes,
Instagram for you. Like it's okay to
yes.
come back.
Have your rates and then don't be afraid if you really really love that brand and you really want to work with them and they just don't have the budget because sometimes that happens. Don't be afraid to adjust the ask, adjust the deliverables. Okay, maybe you can't have Instagram and Instagram stories and Instagram live. Maybe we can just do an Instagram carousel post. Would you be
Right.
okay with that? And a lot of times they'll be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I even had a brand recently who did that. They said, oh, sorry, can you do it for this lower price?
Hmm.
All of those. And I said, no. And I changed it and I changed the deliverables. And
Hmm.
then miraculously, they had
Hmm.
the budget for the higher one. They went,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, no, we don't want that.
Yeah,
But
we don't
good
want that.
news. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Good news.
happens
They
a
got the
lot
budget.
too. That happens a lot.
I know. And I'm like, oh, weird that you miraculously got
Hmm.
this budget out of nowhere that you
Out of
didn't
nowhere.
have. It is
That,
interesting. And sometimes it's hard, right? Like you're sitting there
yeah,
thinking like I need this extra money or I want
yeah,
this extra money. Should I just do it? And it's
yeah.
like, no, just change your deliverables because in the end you'll still get that money.
Hmm.
You're not working nearly as much for it.
Right.
And also you're not undermining yourself and then
Hmm.
saying, basically telling the brand they can always come back to you
Hmm.
and tell
Yeah.
you lower and you'll do it.
And then you have that relationship. And
Yeah.
in the PR world and the brand world and the marketing, a lot of times they move around a lot. It's very high turnover. So I've been in situations where a marketing rep, they didn't have the budget. And I was able to work with them on reducing the deliverables,
Hmm.
but they later moved to a different company and they had a much bigger budget and they reached out to me and I was able to get what I want. So it's a relationship building business. And I know we're bloggers, we're used to being in our own world doing our
Right.
own thing, but we got to think marketing people and PR people are very social. And so they love building relationships is their business. That's their job.
Yes.
That's what they do. So don't be afraid to, build those relationships. Like it's the end of the year. So for me, I'll go through all of my emails that I had that, we went back and forth, whether they worked or not. And I'll reach out and say, hey, is this a good email for you? Is it okay if I still reach out to you in 2022? And so that's another thing you want to always do, like at the end of the year. Try to, have that relationship with them.
Yeah, that actually leads into kind of one of our other questions is like, how do you, we've talked about like, how do you follow up with people who didn't work out, but how do you
Mm-hmm.
follow up with clients that do work out? Like, do you send them insights a week after, 30 days after? Do you follow up a couple months later to tell them how things have gone? Like, what's kind of your process for the follow up?
If it is a brand that I work with, we work with the campaign is closed, then yes. Part of the contract process is, doing the exit portion of the work. So that's sending them, your insight, sending them, all of the numbers, how everything landed, usually sending them screenshots so they can see how that worked out. So you want to do that. And then, of course, you want to invoice them. You want to send them an invoice. and, and you want to make sure that you receive payment within the terms of your contract. So those are the most important things after I work with the brand. Getting them the numbers, getting them an invoice, and then making sure I'm paid in a timely manner. Whatever we agreed on. If it was net 30, then I expect to be, compensated. I expect to receive payment within 30 days.
Yes. And have you ever had those situations where you've had to follow up with somebody who like hasn't paid an
Unfortunately, I have. I think it's the nature of the business, and when you work with brands, it is what it is, and sometimes it's not their fault. It is like I'll say, it's maybe 1 out of 10 brands. It's very rare for me. I guess I've been lucky in that regard that I haven't had to, chase people down or threaten them with legal
Yeah.
action. So
Oh God.
it hasn't happened too often for me, but it has happened. And then, usually if they're late, I'll send a simple email. Hey, I haven't received payment. I know it was due on this day. And if I'm still not getting it and they're giving a bunch of excuses, I'll tack on a late fee.
Yeah.
If you're late, you're late. We're out of contract at this point and we're in breach. So I will charge you a late fee. And then every month, that same month, however long it takes you to get me payment, I will charge you more of a late fee. And so the late fees start adding up. And then usually once they get that first late fee, they're like, oh, because it's usually for,
Right.
5%, 10% of whatever, the original contract was. And they're usually like, oh, well, we got to get this money to her.
We already didn't want to have to pay.
Yes, we have to get this to her quick, fast, and in a hurry. And then there's only been one situation where I've had a brand that was so late that I had to threaten them with legal action. I had to blast them on social media. That was only once, and it wasn't the brand's fault. It was the PR company's fault.
Yeah, I do see that tend to happen often,
Mm-hmm.
more often, I think, is like,
Yeah.
I think that like you have this separation, right? When you have a PR company
Mm-hmm.
sometimes is like you don't have somebody in-house. And so like
Mm-hmm.
in-house, like a lot of times they just forward it. They
Yeah.
like forward it to accounting and they're like, you take
Yes.
care of it and accounting takes care of it. But PR
Mm-hmm.
companies, sometimes, especially smaller ones, don't have an
Mm-hmm.
accountant necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's their job to pay it and it just doesn't happen
Yeah.
as quickly
Yeah.
sometimes. So, but
That's the
sometimes it
benefit of
does.
working with the brand. A lot of times you can just forward it straight. You would be sending the invoice to their accounting department, and that person would usually take care of it versus like, in a PR company, you're dealing with that rep for everything. They're handling everything and they're working with multiple influencers and bloggers on multiple campaigns and,
Right.
it's not their fault. So,
No, it just
there's nothing
happens.
they can do.
Okay, we have a question that came in.
Okay.
Oh, do you still have a relationship with the first brands you worked with?
The first brand I ever worked with way back when, I got paid. I will never forget. It was
Oh
with
no.
JC Penney.
What?
It was with JC Penney was the first brand I ever worked with, and it was
That's
through like
wild.
a blogger platform. Now that blogger platform
God.
is they're no longer in existence, but it was just on social media posts. They just paid me to send out some tweets, and I think I had to post something on Facebook, and
Okay.
that was it. And actually, like a few years ago, I was able to work with them again on another campaign. So I've managed to actually work with, in total, I've probably worked with JCPenney's like three times in my career. So it's just always been with different PR companies. But yeah, I have. And honestly, the first time, and I'll just tell you guys, the first time I ever made money, it was like $50.
Yeah,
That was all I got made was $50.
right? Yeah, like I think I did,
And it was like they had just paid me $100,000. That $50. It
right?
was like,
Feels so big.
what?
Feels so big at the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
That is so funny. Yeah, I think most of my stuff happened with like smaller brands, and I was not
mm-hmm.
really a food blogger. I was more so
Yeah.
like a photographer.
Hmm.
and I was like getting paid, and like I'd get paid like 50 to 100 bucks, and I'd get
Hmm.
so excited. And then I had a friend who was like a professional full-time food blogger,
Yes.
and she was like, oh, we're going to partner on this because we live down the street from each other. She's like, we're
Hmm.
going to partner on this together. We're going to go to their grocery store, and we're
Hmm.
going to like film this whole thing on their it was like Facebook Live or something at the time. So I was like, okay, cool. She's like,
Yes.
so I worked out our brand deals. We're both getting 1,000. And I was like, dollars
Right. Like
for
what?
what? What are we
Yeah.
doing? I
Yeah.
was blown away. I
Yes.
was so confused. I was like, should I not be charging what I'm charging?
Right.
Like, wait a minute. She was like,
Yes.
obviously, she was in a different realm than I was. She
Hmm.
had ads on her website. Like, it was a
Hmm.
very different thing. But she was like, no, you're doing the work.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of times people forget is like, yes, people can pay you over a certain amount.
Hmm.
You have so many followers, you have so many web views or page
Yeah.
views, whatever. But like, you should still be getting a good base pay for
Yes.
whatever hours you're spending doing things.
Yes.
And I think that's where the
Always.
difference is. People are like, I'll give you this for this bag of nuts. Can you do
Hmm.
this? And you're like, no. And
Yes.
here's why.
I always say you have to think about it like the bigger bloggers and influencers, they get paid more money than me because they have a longer reach than
Yes.
I do. But you know, we're a lot of times we're even when it comes to the work, the
Yeah.
content, the recipe, the photos. We're the same, so we should get compensated the same. I understand they get more because their reach
Right.
goes a lot farther than mine. But as far as the work, it should
Yeah.
reflect. That's why I said don't be afraid to ask for what you
Right.
want. Brands, they have the budgets, they have the money, so don't be afraid. And don't let them tell you that your audience isn't big. You know, you have to
Yeah.
sell yourself because it's called pitching. So you have to sell yourself on, look, I understand that I don't have a big audience, but this is what I can do. I have, you know, amazingly clear, bright photos that you can use on your website, on your social media. I have, you know, I'm a recipe developer. I can do that. You know, just don't be afraid to list like your value to the brand and let them know. And always make sure that, you know, it's cost effective and that you're comfortable with the rate. Because
Right.
the last thing you want to do is work with a brand and you know you should have got more money
Yeah.
and you still have to work with them. And it's like, it's just not a good feeling. It's not a good place to be. So you don't ever want to do that.
Agreed. I think that's one of those hard things to like explain sometimes too. And
Mm-hmm.
I've actually written out like a draft email that I literally just copy and paste every time that someone tries to like undercut that and just say,
Mm-hmm.
here's the base of why you're paying me what you're
Mm-hmm.
paying me. You have to pay for these 5
Yes.
things that I do. You have to pay for these hours that I do this, the props,
Mm-hmm.
the ingredients, the time that takes to do the recipe development, all this stuff, and kind of list it out for them so that they actually get it. Because
Yes.
otherwise, like, you're a lot of times like I'll get like, oh, you're a nano influencer, you're
Mm-hmm.
a micro influencer, and it's like, cool, but I'm still having to do all
I'm
this work.
still producing the work.
Right. Would
Yes.
you ever go to a lawyer and be like, you don't have a big enough
Mm-hmm.
following of
Mm-mm.
employees or of clients or whatever, so I'm
Yeah.
going to pay you less? And it's like,
Mm.
no, if the
Oh.
lawyer has the experience
Mm-hmm.
and is doing the hours, you're going to pay them, like you said, that kind of like base pay. Like, this
Mm-hmm.
is includes all of this. And then, sure, if you want to pay extra because that person has
Mm-hmm.
200,000
Yeah.
followers for
That
that reach,
reach. Yeah.
sure, you can pay them separately for that, but
Yeah.
everyone should be compensated for the work that they're actually
Yes.
doing because there's
Yes.
so much of that.
And I
Okay.
think a lot of times don't be afraid to ask because I think a lot of times we don't get the money that we feel we need because we're afraid to ask. And it's like you'll never know if you don't ask. You'll
Yeah.
be surprised at the things that, you know, I think that I've been able to make 6 figures because I haven't been afraid to ask. And I've even shocked myself sometimes when a brand comes back and they're like, yeah, we'll do that. And it's like, oh, I
You
can't
will?
believe they said that.
I think your number one quote that people just kept using after your last session for Tastemaker was, we're not leaving money on the
Mm-mm.
table. And it was
Don't
like,
leave it in. Yeah, we're
okay,
not
yeah,
leaving. Mm-mm. Not in 21. I said in 2021, but we're not going to do it
Yeah.
in 2022
Yeah.
either. We're not leaving
Not.
any money on the table. I want all of the money that is due to
Yes.
me.
Yeah. I think I think that's the hardest part. And I
Yes.
think we're in this industry that truly is like, even if people say, oh, I've been doing this for 10 years, I've been doing this
Mm-hmm.
for 15 years, it's still really new. And like
Yes.
every aspect of what we do changes almost daily. It's
Daily.
like,
Yeah.
okay, Instagram has a new feature. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
TikTok has a new thing. Oh, Pinterest just decided to change how they're doing their
Yeah.
stuff. Google has new SEO analytics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
there's constantly new
Yeah.
stuff happening. There's constantly new
Yeah.
bloggers and
Mm-hmm.
content creators. There's so much change and so much
Mm-hmm.
going on that there aren't really like set structures in place. You don't
Mm-hmm.
go to school for this. You
Yeah.
don't get a
No.
certification for this. The closest thing you have are workshops and trainings
Mm-hmm.
by people who are experts, but they're experts because of their experience, not because of
Mm-hmm.
schooling.
And like
So,
we said, this is new.
yeah,
This is new, and it's like $1 trillion industry. It's not going anywhere. Influencers, like brands, are starting to know that, okay, this is like where it's at. Is
yeah,
for me to, the it's that word of mouth. It's almost like it's word of mouth. Like
yeah,
your audience know they trust you. So if a brand can capture a just a small portion of that and have you to say that I use this brand, I love it, you should go out and buy it,
right.
then and it doesn't matter if you're a nano influencer. Like they love us too. They love because we cultivate such a close relationship with our audience.
Yeah,
So it's more they're I think they're more likely to go out and buy because LaKita said this was it
right,
than
right.
maybe some mega super blogger that has things in Target or whatever. They're more like my people. They trust me. They know that I'm not going to sell them anything. So it's like, yeah, I can really ask her about this if it works, and I can know that
Yeah.
she's going to tell me the truth.
And that you're actually gonna like respond. Like
Mm-hmm.
if they DM
Yes.
you, you're gonna respond to them and tell them,
Yes.
yeah, I really did love this product. You should try this version of it, or I loved this
Mm-hmm.
color, or I loved whatever, and give
Yes.
them that honest feedback. And I think it's
Yeah.
sometimes just looking on a smaller scale and
Yes.
not going, okay, for next year, my dream client is
Yeah.
Target. It's like,
Yeah.
well, maybe not Target. Maybe we need to scale it back and look. For me, I like looking locally.
Yes.
I love working within my own community.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really big when I lived in St. Louis, and now I love
Mm-hmm.
doing that in California. And it's like, just try to see, like, there could be
Yeah.
companies you could partner with in a million different ways, and those could
Yeah.
turn into long-term partnerships. And that's kind of the
Yes.
goal.
That
Long
really
term.
is the goal. And most of the long-term partnerships that I have that are like 6 months, that are a year-long partnerships, there were smaller brands.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. It's different in, me working with a large brand and then paying me that one time versus working with a smaller brand and me getting paid like every month. Like it's different. It just feels a little bit different and it's more stable.
Oh yeah. It's definitely better than having to go every month like, oh gosh, oh gosh, oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh. Am I gonna have
Yep.
something for next month? Am I not?
Yes.
It's nice to kind of have that stability and knowing that. And it truly to like speak to the like brand side
Mm-hmm.
actually helps them way more because if you
Yeah.
mention a product once, it's
Mm-hmm.
that whole mentality. I think it
Mm-hmm.
used to be 7 touches for
Yeah.
somebody to buy something. They're redoing the research on it now. I want to say like Stanford or something.
Yeah,
They're
because of
saying it's
social
getting
media.
closer to 100, a
Yeah.
hundred touches. And I was
Yeah,
like,
because it's like social media and we're so inundated with
yeah,
information that it's kind of like you have to. So that's the benefit of like a longer partnership
yeah.
is I get to really like show what I can do.
Yeah, and to continuously be saying, not just like one time and then it
Mm-hmm.
hides and they'll never see it again. It's like
Mm-hmm.
your audience is continuously seeing this brand and going, okay, LaKita really believes in this brand and
Yeah.
she's using it over and over again.
Yes.
And I've now seen her use it 6 times. So like it must
Mm-hmm.
be a good brand that I
Must be
should
pretty
try.
good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I should go out of my way to go and purchase that.
Yes.
So I do think that that makes sense too. Okay, our last question of the day. I know you and I
Okay.
could just talk for hours.
Yes.
We're really good at that.
Yeah.
what is your biggest piece of advice for food bloggers or content creators? It can be along with the brand and client partnerships, or just in general, like something that you learned along the
Mm.
way that you were like, I wish someone told me this years ago.
Ah, I think the biggest thing that, like, if I was to go back to 2013, blogger self, I think I would just like tell myself, like, I know that imposter syndrome gets to all of us, and we're looking at what our counterparts are doing, and we feel like we're not growing, and I'm a loser. And I mean, I swear I'm right there with y'all. I quit blogging twice a week. I blow the dust off my resume
Love it.
twice a week. So I'm right there with you. I totally get it. But I think you have to just really realize that you're here for a reason. And like you can do this. You have to believe in yourself. So when you write out that list of those 12 brands and you set that intention that I want to work with one brand a month, you have to believe that you can do it. I believe I can do it. Visualize yourself creating that content. Think about, why you want to do it. And just every time you have those really, really hard days, just, you have to like define your why you're doing this. And on those hard days when you want to quit and I want to go back to corporate America, I pull out that mental checklist of why am I doing this? Why am I here? I know I got the horrible contents and she told me that I sucked and my recipes were trash, in the comments. I know that, you know,
Those
Google
trolls, I tell you
decided
what.
Google decided to knock my recipe from number 1 to number 55. This brand I thought was a shoe-in, they ghosted me. When all those things happen, like you have to have your why like close to your heart, because blogging is not for the faint at heart. Like it is
No.
hard. It will tear at your self-worth, your value, and your emotions. And so you got to get really clear on why you're here, for you to go the long haul. I have lasted because I know exactly why I'm here and what I'm doing. And I'm here for the people that give me the positive comments, the people that send me an email that say I made your cake for my son's birthday and he absolutely loved it. I'm here to love on and hold those people. So my audience may not be huge, but I always was like, we may not be like big in numbers, but I always want to have deep relationships with my people. I always want to know y'all values. So that's what I would say. Get really, really clear on your why. Define your why for yourself.
I think that is so insightful, and I think we do have that pressure, right? That like no
Mm-hmm.
one seems to talk about on all the TV shows ragging on
Mm-hmm.
bloggers, or all the people who just sit around going blogging. Like, what does
Yeah.
that mean? And it's
Yeah.
like blogging requires, and not just content creation, but like blogging in general requires like
Mm-hmm.
55 hats that you have to wear. And
Yes.
they're not just like, oh, things that I'm good at. It's like, oh, you have to be a lawyer while you
Mm-hmm.
also have to be your own, social media manager, while you also have to be your own content creator, you have to be a writer, a photographer, now a videographer. Like you
Mm-hmm.
have to have all these skills, an
Yeah.
SEO expert, a web designer. Like there's so many
Mm-hmm.
things you have to be good at, and no one talks
Yes.
about that, and it can be so stressful. And a lot of people, I think, think to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
oh, blogging, great, you get to work from home, and it's like you work 10 hours a week, and you're like, no,
Yeah.
I work 80.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm constantly working. Like
Yes.
my family will be like, all right, let's go do this thing, and I'm like, oh, I still have to post this and
Mm-hmm.
this, and they're like, okay, why? I'm like, well, if I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
post it exactly this time, it won't perform, and
Yes.
blah blah blah. So I think
Mm-hmm.
having that why, and whether it is a
Yeah.
mental thing or even physically writing it out for yourself
Mm-hmm.
somewhere and having it, or
Yeah.
having, like you said, those positive comments. I saw a
Yes.
thing earlier that was like, have a folder on your computer with all of your
Yes.
happy wins, where you can
Yes.
pull out those positive comments that really spoke to your
When you
heart
need them.
when you need
Yes.
them, and be like, wow, yeah, I just got this really nasty message from a
Yeah.
troll saying that my recipe sucks, and
Mm-hmm.
that even though they changed 12 parts of it, it didn't work out.
Yeah. There's nothing I can do about that.
Right. But like they're hating on your recipe. It's
Yes.
like, okay, now go back to the ones where people
Mm-hmm.
who you don't know left these beautiful comments
Yes.
about your recipes or about
Yes.
you, or they love that you've been showing up
Mm-hmm.
on stories or whatever it is. Screenshot those, put them in this folder and
Yes.
open it up when you're having one of those days of like you
Yeah.
said, 2 times a week. It's just,
Yes.
what's
Like,
going on?
why
Why
am
am I
I
doing
doing
this?
this? Why
Yeah.
am I doing this? And get clear and know exactly why you. And that, I think that that's what sustains, long-term bloggers, is when you know your why and you're very clear about that. That you can go from year and year, because even especially because back to working with brands, especially when you're working with brands, you get beat up. Like, it's not easy working with brands. They're tearing down your content. They're tearing down things that you've done. I mean, I literally just had my grandmother's recipe that I had a riff apart, and it was like,
This is my
so it is not.
grandma's. Thank you.
It is not for the faint at heart. So that's why it's really important to, like, your why. And I saw someone earlier, it was retelling the recipe. She said, it's all about building community.
Yeah.
And it really is. And you can tell the influencer bloggers that do that and the
Yeah.
ones that don't.
Yeah. I'll stop following those people that doesn't feel
Yeah.
genuine anymore. And it's like,
Yeah.
if this doesn't feel genuine to me, why am I here? Why am I participating in this? Like
Yeah.
you were saying too, it's like with the brands, it's like if you're telling me that this shouldn't be in my grandmother's recipe, that's a
Yeah.
traditional whatever it is, it's like
Hmm.
for me, I've had magazines come back and be like, well,
Yeah.
we don't like how this is made. And I'm like,
Hmm.
this is how my grandmother's
Yeah.
family made this Hanukkah recipe for the
Yeah.
last 100 years. I don't know
Yeah.
how long. I'm not changing it for you.
Yeah. Yes.
Like,
Yes.
if you want to make some note in the comments, that's
Hmm.
fine. But like,
Hmm.
you can't change those things. And it is
Yeah.
hard and it like hurts sometimes, right? When
Yes.
it's like, especially when it's something that's a part of our creative side where
Hmm.
it's like, ooh, that picture isn't what I like, or it's not even what I like. It's always like, ooh, that picture is wrong. You
Yes.
did this thing wrong. And it's like,
Yeah.
is it actually wrong or is it just not what you had pictured in
Hmm.
your mind?
Yes.
So having those
Yeah.
positives, when I get a positive review from a
Hmm.
brand, I always ask them, like, can I put this in my
Yes.
testimonials? Can I
Yes.
have this as something that I
Yes.
can literally pull out and put on my
Like,
media
yeah.
kit?
Put in your media kit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because like those feel good too to have like be like,
Hmm.
oh, this big brand said that
Hmm.
I'm a dream to work with because of this, this, and this. So that
Yes.
you do get those negative feedbacks. You're like, well, this other company
Yes.
thought I was awesome.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there. Well, we got
Yes.
to so much today. I'm
Yes.
so glad that you were here with us. And
Me too.
for those who are still on here, our next conference is coming up in March in Chicago. So if you
Hmm.
haven't signed up, go to our bio. And you can buy tickets through there. And then also
Yes.
make sure that you sign up for our newsletter for any sales or things like that that are coming up.
Yes.
And thank you again, LaKita, for joining
Thank
us.
you.
And can't wait to talk to you again, I'm sure, sometime.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.